Ask the Mayor on KWBE, our Thursday morning look at Beatrice City government. And Mayor Bob Morgan, I knew I was going to call him Bob Sargent. Bob Morgan is off today on different things. And we welcome in Beatrice Municipal Airport Manager Dennis Schmitt. Dennis, thanks for coming in today. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
I don't know if we've had you in before, maybe.
One time with Diana
that's
and
right.
Mayor Worth.
Yeah, that was quite some time back. But appreciate you coming in. You've got almost 2 years under your belt at the facility right now.
Fast approaching that. In July, it'll be 2.
Now, you were from Nebraska originally, but you came here from what, Kansas City?
Olathe, Kansas, yes.
Yeah. What type of facility there in comparison to what you live in now?
An FBO is very similar. We had a lot more corporate traffic, obviously, being in the Kansas City area, but runway was even smaller, about 4,100 feet down there, but basically kind of the same thing. Yeah. But I did more on the FBO side of it, customer service, line service, and marketing down there.
Yeah. You originally were from where in Nebraska?
Ord, Nebraska.
Ord, Nebraska. Okay,
yes.
Yeah, kind of the central area of the state.
Very central, yes.
There. And then you went to Kansas City, and then up there
from Ord, I went in the Air Force. I did 24 years and 5 years in Japan, and then the majority of it in Northern California.
Well, thanks for your service. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, and the rest is history. You're here in Beatrice now, leading Municipal Airport. You mentioned the shorter runway in Kansas City. You have a couple runways. You were mentioning before the program about 5,600 feet and about 4,400 feet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, both those. The main one is the 5,600 feet, and it has a 600-foot stopway on it also. Yeah. It's 100 feet wide, so it can handle considerable-sized aircraft. And then the other, the crosswind runway 1432, is, I believe, 75 feet wide. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions we always get is, what size aircraft we can get here at Beatrice. And I actually kind of had to do a little research because it's based on weight. Yeah. So the weight limit's about 45,500 pounds for a dual wheel. Mm-hmm. And Dassault Falcon 900, which most people probably aren't going to know what that is, but if you want to Google Taylor Swift's private jet, that's about the larger size aircraft we can get here.
Costs a little bit of money.
Yes.
I've been asked before, and I don't know if this is possible or not, but let's say a small passenger airliner developed a problem and had to make a landing. Would you be able to field one here?
It depends on the aircraft specifications, their takeoff and landing distances and stuff, whether we could do that. A small airline would be a little bit of a problem taking care of something like that here. But when it comes to the weight and the size of aircraft, we can exceed some of those limits once in a while. It's just we can't do repetitive operations like that.
Well, winter really hit big this first of this week, and you're out there in kind of a little bit of an area that's elevated above a lot of the rest of the city of Beatrice as you come up North 6th there. Not much to stop the wind. When you get snowy weather like this and, say, 7-8 inches of snow, does it kind of stall operations for a while, or can you keep aircraft coming and going?
This one stalled us a little bit. Last year, everything we had was, just 2-3 inches at a time, and we were able to get that cleared off within a day or so. This one here took us a couple days. We had the snow first off, and then by the time it quit, the winds picked up and the drifting, and just couldn't get on top of it. Yesterday, we got the airport opened back up, so it took us a couple days with this. And, one of the issues is where to put all the snow, and especially with another snowstorm coming in. Yeah. And as I'd kind of mentioned before, too, when it's only 2 or 3 inches, we can just kind of plow it off to the edge of the runways and pile it up that way. But we have to be careful about covering up the lights. When we get a snowstorm like this past one, we got to kind of windrow it and then blow it over the lights and displace it that way.
What's your fleet of equipment like for snow removal? You got a pretty good size of...
Yeah, we have good size equipment, but it's older equipment. We have some old surplus Oshkosh Army plows and stuff like this, but we do have a newer tractor with a good blower on it and a bigger blade. So it's just myself and 2 full-time employees out there and doing the best we can to get the snow off.
Pretty much an all-day and all-night job then sometimes.
It can be, yes.
Yeah. You mentioned we were talking earlier before we went on about the instrument land or the light system that you have that extends south. When you get a big storm like this, those are elevated a little bit so that they stay operational without a lot of maintenance, or do you have to go out there once in a while?
Yeah, we check that all the time. Steve comes in and opens up first thing in the morning. He'll drive the runway and check lights that are in or operative. The ones down there, the malls, ours, it's I always got to look at the acronym. what it's called, but it's a medium intensity approach lighting system with runway alignments, the flashing lights on the end. And those poles are pretty high, so it would take quite a bit of snow to bury those.
In addition to yourself, how many people work there on a typical day?
On a typical day, so I got myself, 2 full-time employees that kind of do the maintenance, the mowing, keeping the equipment upgraded, and helping with servicing aircraft. And then I have 3 part-time employees. Usually only one of those come in each day, but they generally work from about 4 o'clock till 7 at night when we close. And, with the exception of one of them, they're have full-time jobs other places too. So
kind of a lean operation.
It is a little bit lean, but we get the job done.
Yeah. And you mentioned people going home because they can't obviously work 24 hours every day, but let's say an aircraft comes in at 8 or 9 at night or needs to come in. How is that handled through automated systems or whatever?
It's not anything automated. There are a lot of times we hope we kind of have a little advance notice, and sometimes they do. They'll give us a call during the day, say, hey, we're going to be in the area 10, 11 o'clock tonight, we're going to need fuel. And that's fine. Myself or one of my full-time guys will come in to service the aircraft. Once in a while, it's no notice whatsoever. You'll get that phone call at 11, 12 o'clock at night and somebody needs fuel. And more times it's usually like a medevac type.
Yeah. Okay. Most of the time, do the aircraft operators themselves kind of know what your schedule is, so they try to avoid those? They
do. All that information's out there online and different charts and stuff like that, so they know our hours, they know our capabilities, and what type of fuel and what we can do.
You said, made mention of medevac. I know that in a lot of accidents or medical calls around this area, you're seeing more and more medical helicopters being used to try to cut down that amount of time to get somebody to a trauma center. They use, if I remember right, they kind of land sort of northeast of the administration building most of the time out there. And then local ambulance units take people there.
Yeah, they've done that. They'll land on our ramp right there. A lot of times it's just kind of just to the west of our building where the jet fuel pump is. They'll land there, and if they need to transfer somebody by ambulance, they can do that there. But.
Yeah. Well, this past year, or going into this 2-year budget cycle, a change was made that it's always been a Beatrice Airport Authority, and it went to basically a part of the overall city budget now, and you have an airport advisory board. You have a lot of experience on that board from people who were on the authority board, but what's the change been like? Has it been pretty seamless as far as you can see, or any major changes you've had to kind of adjust to?
No, it's been pretty seamless. If anything, it's actually kind of made my job a little bit easier.
Really?
A lot of what Diana had done in the past and before the city had taken over was, getting the meetings ready and getting all the bills ready and stuff like that. Now being part of the city, anytime I get a bill in and stuff like that, I code it and sign it and get it down to the city office and stuff and get ready for the city council meetings. Erin Sadoff is the one that she kind of gets the meeting scheduled and getting people lined up. So that takes some of the responsibilities off of me out there too. So I just basically got to come up with the director's report and things I want to include on the agenda. But it's been pretty seamless and it's been a good transition.
From a financial standpoint, as you look at, development of the airport or improvements, is there an advantage to kind of being a part, you think, of the overall city budget? Because I know in the past, the facility would have to come before the council and kind of say, hey, we need this much tax money. Now what's the levy that'll raise that?
Yeah. No, I think it's been a big benefit being part of the city and stuff. I mean, even this past year, I don't know if I would have heard about it or if we'd been included in it, but Senator Fisher had gone to Tobias, said, hey, what does your community need? And, at that time, he knew we had a need for hangars out there. I mean, I have a waiting list of about 34 people wanting to get in a hangar. And so he asked if that might be a possibility, and it's kind of looking good that we might get about $2.8 million for a hangar. And I don't know if we would have been considered, before that. So
that's one of the things we're going to talk about here in a little bit. We'll take a little break right now, but we have with us today Beatrice Municipal Airport Manager Dennis Schmitt on Ask the Mayor. But this is Ask the Mayor on KWBE. Our guest today is Beatrice Municipal Airport Manager Dennis Schmitt. We were talking before the break about potential for federal support for hangar space. That's kind of one of the big things you're looking at, isn't it? You're kind of squeezed for space right now, aren't you?
It is, and we've had it in the plans for a while for a 6-place T hangar, in which that only takes care of about 6 people that need hangar space here. But hangars are so expensive. I mean, a 6-place to get 6 people in a hangar is about a $2 million project right now. So the 2.8 for a box hangar will help us out quite a bit. And then we also have in the schedule to get a 6-place T hangar done in the next few years. So.
Is that for like longer term lease for people that want to put their aircraft in there? Is it also like, let's say you have a big business jet come in overnight and they might stay here and they need space too sometimes?
Yeah, ideally, I'd like to have a box hangar to get corporate aircraft in when they come, because we do get some traffic once in a while for Exmark and Coke Fertilizer. Butler machinery flies in here too. So it would be nice to have the space, but it's kind of hard to have a hangar dedicated for that because they're not in here all that often. Every couple of months is all they come in here, and you can't necessarily have a lease and put a bunch of smaller aircraft in there and then kick them out every time a jet comes in. So
where I live, I think it's usually late afternoon, early evening about every day, maybe not when it snows like this, but just about every day I'll see kind of a bigger twin engine or something come in. Is that a UPS?
There is. That is UPS. It's Ameriflight is the contractor that flies in every Monday through Friday, with the exception of the last couple of days when we had the snow and stuff. But yeah, every night about 7:30, between 7:30 and 8, they come in and drop off some packages, pick up some packages, and it's just kind of a loop. They're based out of Omaha, but I believe the flight we get comes in from Kearney.
Yeah. Any others that come in, say, more than 2 or 3 times a week, or is that probably the most regular one?
That's probably about the most regular for larger aircraft like that. The only other things we see on a regular basis, pipeline inspections, a lot of aircraft out there doing that. That'll be just smaller single engines and some helicopters doing that.
Yeah. Any business jet traffic, say when companies are out recruiting, potential new sites or looking at expansions or things like that?
We do see some of that. Sometimes it's kind of hard to know what somebody's doing unless you ask them.
It's kind of a secretive thing.
A lot of reason people fly privately is for the privacy and stuff. A lot of corporations too, when they fly, some of the programs out there like Flight Tracker, Flight Aware, and they'll have their numbers blocked, where they're going and what they're doing. They just don't want that out there a lot. But yes, they do.
Don't want the competition knowing what they're up to.
Knowing where they're at and what they're looking at. So.
That's true. The revenue sources we mentioned prior to going to an advisory board situation when you had a share of property taxes as part of your budget. What are the main revenue sources now that you operate on?
A lot of it is ground leases and the hangar rents. We have some Quonsets over there on the kind of the south end of the airport that we rent out. We have a ground lease where Johnny Sadoff is out there. We do that. And there's also a ground lease for another Quonset out there. Tractor Supply is another ground lease. Capri Inn's another ground lease. And we do have 3 lots in between them right across from Walmart that are still open that we would like to attract a business in there too. So
that probably is a pretty significant amount of your budget, isn't it?
It is. It's a pretty steady source, and get more off of that than we do fuel sales and things like that. So it's nice to have that.
Sometime back, there was the discussion about where you have your fuel island west of the administration building there, that you were wanting to redesign that or relocate it. What's the update on that?
The update just found out yesterday, actually. It was going to be part of the Taxiway Charlie and Apron project, which the Taxiway Charlie project and the Apron was, we currently have a taxiway that runs straight out to the runway. And due to FAA guidelines, there's got to be a turn in there somewhere. Back in the day, that was okay. It's not anymore. Somebody's got to make a conscious decision and turn to get access to the runway.
Kind of a safety thing.
It is. So we'd get rid of that section of the taxiway that goes straight to the runway, and they would move it down and make another location for you to get on the runway to get us in compliance there. And then part of that program or project is to redo the apron area where we have tie downs to park aircraft. And in the middle of that, we have a fuel island. We got a self-serve 100 low lead on one end of it and full service on the other. And we do have underground tanks there. So part of that project, since they're redoing the whole apron, would be to remove the tanks and get an above ground tank just off to the kind of southeast side of the parking ramp there.
For aircraft coming in or going out, we always hear about an incident around the country where there's cross traffic on the ground and it wasn't supposed to be there. Is that kind of part of this whole thing? Just trying to avoid those situations where you might have a conflict?
A little bit. With that, the island in the center there, it does create a little congestion. It is kind of nice where we don't have fuel trucks out there that, we can get a few aircraft around the pump at the same time and you don't have to move aircraft around to get them fueled and stuff. So there are some benefits to having the fuel island. It served its purposes, but now it's also a little bit better to get your fuel above ground. It's easier to monitor for leaks and things like that.
The overall conditions of the runways, I think the one major one was reconstructed not that long ago, the concrete thing, but are both runways in pretty good shape?
Overflowing when they come in. But yeah, it's nice to have at the airport. A lot of smaller airports don't have an avionics shop. So we get people from Lincoln, Crete, Columbus, just all over southeast Nebraska.
I see. What's your size of airport? Are you basically at kind of the minimum medium size that you actually have to have somebody? You have enough traffic coming in that you need a mechanic? Or
no, like I said, I mean, there are sometimes a little bit bigger airports that don't have some of the services that we have. So,
okay. Is that a revenue generator for you at all, or not really?
A little bit with fuel sales and people coming in. We do have courtesy cars, so a lot of times if somebody's going to spend the night, they leave donations and stuff for that. So
that's good. We talked about earlier in the program the grant possibilities for developing projects. How does the Federal Aviation Administration work into? I know you can make application for projects, but is there a certain cycle you have to go through, or I know they have a lot of airports that are wanting funds to do various projects across Nebraska and other states.
Yeah.
But how often can you kind of tap that support?
That, like I said, it's kind of a process with the FAA and forecasting things out. We have an engineer that we use, and they kind of keep their eye on funds that are available and what needs to be done. And the engineers that we're currently using, they've been with the airport for quite a while, so they kind of know our needs and what we need. But yeah, a lot of that's kind of forecasted out, and then the Nebraska Department of Transportation, the Aeronautics Division, they kind of prioritize and look what all the other airports need and stuff too, and try to do what's best to serve everybody.
Aside from the need for more hangar space, and then also what the kind of apron fuel area, are there any things out there, say maybe 5 or 10 years down the road, that you're kind of just taking, a beginning look at that you may need?
Yeah, a lot of that, and Diana had done that in the past. I mean, you try to look down the road quite a ways, and they'd even the advisory council at the time, or the airport board, fence, more security around the airport is something that had been looked at. And, you also have to maintain what you currently have. Concrete doesn't last forever. So at what point do you replace certain parts of the runway and things like that? So that's some of the stuff we're looking at. Upgrading some of our lighting system. We talked about the the approach lights on the runway. We have PAPIs, which is precision approach. It tells you whether you're too high or too low when you're coming down. Different lighting systems like that I'm looking at, and those are a little bit smaller, probably under $1 million to do. So, but yeah, things like this project with the ramp and apron, those are kind of big dollar ones, and you kind of got to budget and save up some of your federal money to accomplish those things.
I always wondered about this because I'm not a pilot, and I have been through encountering great weather or really bad weather. But in a really low ceiling, bad weather situation, say like, snowstorm or the impending weather like that, the facility as it is right now, can you land an aircraft just simply by the systems you have without really having to have a big visual look at?
No, the way the airport is right now, there are instrument-rated pilots, obviously, that can do it, kind of blindly, but there are minimums, how low the clouds are. And for Beatrice here, I believe about 500 feet is kind of our minimum there. And, that's better than some airports. Their ceilings may be 1,000. The clouds have to be that high before they can come in. And the things that allow us to do that is, keeping trees removed, clearance around the airport, and our lighting systems, too, like the malls are. So. Yeah.
Knowing how pilots probably talk with pilots a lot when they come to your administration building and the facilities you have, and you mentioned courtesy services, like providing a vehicle. What kind of feedback do you get from people that may not have been to the Beatrice Airport before, but they're flying in for the first time?
I get a lot of good feedback from the first-time people, but a lot of the traffic I do get, it's word of mouth of people that have been here before. Oh, our friends, flying to Arizona for the winter, and they recommend this place, So we do get a lot of word of mouth stuff, and but we do get our first time people that are pleased and impressed with Beatrice. So.
Kind of rewarding. All that work kind of is easier to do when you get some positive feedback about that.
It is, and like I said, when I took over, Diana had the airport in good condition and had been providing great service for many years. So I just kind of stepped into something that was already well established. So.
Tough act to follow, huh?
Well, that part it is, yes.
Yeah. One of the things that I know we've seen in the past, and certain events, or you'll have occasionally historic aircraft fly in to be on display for the public. I think there's an Arizona wing of I forget what it's called. Is it the Confederate Air Force or something like that? Has brought in planes before of the sort of the World War II vintage things like that. There was an event recently where you had a World War II naval pilot, I believe, from the Adams area. He came up because he flew in one of these Hellcat planes that came in not too long ago. Any of those things you foresee in the future, like this year, you'll have some special events, or are those kind of things that they call in and they say, hey, can we do this on kind of a short-term date coming up?
Yeah, some of those are kind of pop-up things. I mean, you don't necessarily plan that out in advance. I know they'd had B-17 fly in, just maintenance reasons, had to stop one time. The Hellcat, for that individual, Don, I can't think of his last name right now, but
I was trying to remember it too, and it's escaping me.
I know, and I've even read his book that he had done too. But anyway, those you generally don't know about, and they don't come down too often. But Don was even out at the airport not too long ago, about a month or couple. Well, actually, it was during Pearl Harbor. They did some sort of ceremony up in Minnesota where that Hellcat that they restored is at, and they come down here and picked Don up and took him up there for the ceremony. So
I think long ago there was a women's air race that made this a stop on their way to. They had certain series of stops, and they pick out certain airports. It's kind of neat to be part of that network.
Yeah, that is pretty neat. And Diana had a bunch of pictures of that. They had aircraft parked in the grass, and they just kind of took over our facilities. They had a lot of people out there at the time. But that I know that organization kind of picks and chooses different airports all the time. So I don't know when it would come around again that we'd have the opportunity to host something like that.
And what's interesting about those events are really interesting to the general public, not just the aviation public. There's people that just like to come out and see those things.
Yeah, I do. Once in a while, something will be flying in, and we'll get people, hey, I've never seen that type of aircraft here before, and just want to come out and see. And everybody's welcome at this public airport to come out and see what's coming in and out. So.
All right. Dennis, thanks for being in with us today. Hopefully the snow will be less, not more this time around.
Yeah, we're hoping a little lighter and a little less water. So.
All right. Thanks for coming in.
All right. Thank you, Doug.